It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host.
Now, the purpose of life is for us to live it and live it fully. The purpose of life, well lived by Omobola Stephen, is for us to offer disruptive yet constructive mindship conversations on topics and subjects that are related to personal development and self-improvement that is going to pivot the positive changes and transformations you and I need in life. Now, we emphasize that we embrace personal development and self-improvement along the course of our lives because when we constantly improve on ourselves and also embrace the positive changes and also the other side of changes that lives bring our way, we tend to find ourselves along the path. And in finding ourselves, we come to realize that there's so much bounties that the universe is always offering us if we don't give up. Now, personal development and self-improvement is a lifelong process that we must all embrace in order for us to see our life transform to where it is, from where it is to where it ought to be. Today, I have Marianne Matzo on Live Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Marianne, she's a retired professor and the Francis E. and A. L. Ziegler Chair in Palliative Care Nursing. Now, she's also an experienced hospice nurse and a podcast host of Everyone Dies. Welcome with me on Live Well Lived by Omobola Stephen, Marianne Matzo.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me, Marianne. I'm your host, Omobola Stephen, and welcome to the podcast. And so let's get the ball rolling. But before I kickstart the podcast fully, I'd like to start with your introduction, permit me. Now, death is the natural part of the life cycle, yet it is shrouded by fear, isolation, and limited understanding of the dying process. Normalizing the life cycle, which includes death, will facilitate the education of the public regarding what may be expected at the end of life and how to make their wishes come true. Now, with this background and introduction in mind, I welcome Marianne once again to the podcast Live Well Lived by Omobola Stephen as we explore this important topic about end of life and how we can plan it and plan it fully at the end of the day. Welcome once again, Marianne.
Thank you.
All right, so let's dive in. So the first question on the mind of my audience is really, what does it mean to live well?
Well, that's, of course, an individual kind of thing. What do we see as a life well lived? For a lot of people, it means that, that they're happy, that there's fulfillment, that they do good work, that if they have a family, that those children are growing to be, resourceful, resilient kinds of people who contribute to society. And, when we're young, kids say, oh, I want to be this when I grow up. I want to be that when I grow up. And we make plans from the time that we're children, thinking about what we want to do. It doesn't always turn out the way we want to do, but we think, these are the things that I want to do, that I want to accomplish, that I want to be able to say my life was well lived. But when we get to the end of life, people, especially in America, will say, oh, I don't even want to talk about that. I don't want to think about that. Even though, there's at least a minimal understanding that we're all going to die, that we're mortal people. But yet we don't make any plans for what old age and what we would want at the end of our lives. We leave that to chance, or we think, oh, our families will make the best decision for us, or my family knows what I want. When in reality, if you haven't talked with them, if you haven't expressed what your goals and values are for your end of life, then how is it that they're supposed to know? So we want to give people the information they need so that they can have and make informed choices and informed plans for the latter part of their life. People also say, well, oh, I'm so upset. I'm 70 years old and oh my God, I can't believe I'm 75 years old. And I always think to myself, and sometimes actually say it, that's a gift that not everybody gets. Not everybody gets to grow old, and not everybody gets to have those later years with their families. And so it's a gift to be able to do that. It's a gift to be able to live a long life. But then the question is, how is that life lived? A lot of people will say, well, if, I can't take care of myself, if I can't feed myself, if I can't walk around, then that's not a life lived. I don't want to live like that. And then the question then becomes, so what do you do about it? How do you make the decisions so that, like, for example, if your heart were to stop, if you don't want to end up in a dependent situation, then you should verbalize to your family members, well, I don't want to be resuscitated if something like that happens. So it's a matter of having conversations, letting people know what you value, what you believe in, and living your best life every day.
Now, having conversations, Marianne, who are the set of people or the folks that we ought to be having this conversation with?
Well, a lot of people, when you say to them, like, plan to have an advance directive, plan to have surrogate decision makers, like with the use of a living will, they immediately say, well, I want my children to do that, without stopping to think, are your children the best people to do that? Because our kids, our spouses, our sisters and brothers, they all have something that they can contribute, that they can help us with, but they might not be the person to make a decision about, should we continue this, mom on a ventilator? Should we have them, be a DNR and not be resuscitated? Should we not treat that pneumonia because they're so sick and frail that they don't have the quality of life that they have always said they wanted to have? And so you might have a child that would be very good at doing that. But I always suggest to people that they really look at that, because sometimes it's really not the child. Because what happens is the child, even their adult children, if they have to make that decision, they can end up feeling like, well, I killed my mother. I pulled the plug on my mother. And they feel that guilt forever. And I always say to people, you didn't pull the plug on your mother. You did for them what they asked you to do. You did the loving thing, the helpful thing. But when it's your parents, sometimes that's really hard. So, like, for me, the people that I have making a decision, I have my husband, because I know that he can do that. He's had to do it before, and I know that he can do that. And then I have a friend who I know knows my wishes and can be strong to do it. I don't have my children. You might have, like I said, you might have children who could be good at doing that, but don't automatically think that it should be your children. And always have a backup, because you never know if the main person that you chose, is even going to be able to be there and be able to do what it is that you've asked them to do.
But really, how can a person plan and plan in so much that their death can be consistent with their values? Now, I'm thinking in my head, that is even if they have a values that they constantly evaluate or reevaluate. So what's your take on that?
Well, we have forms. We have advance directive forms. Every state has their own form. You can Google it, you put in your state and put in advance directive, and it'll give you the form. And they come with instructions. So if you sit and look at it, it'll ask you. You don't have to think about, well, what are my values? It'll ask you. It will say, do you want artificial food and fluids? Now, the state I live in, Oklahoma, by law, they assume that everybody wants artificial food and fluids. So if you don't say anything about it in your advance directive, you automatically look at it. But if you've said, I don't want to be kept alive, if I can't swallow on my own, I don't want artificial food and fluids. Now, and when we're talking about that, what you're talking about is IVs and feeding tubes. It's not things that you can put in your mouth and voluntarily put in, chew up, and swallow. Some people, like for example, with a stroke, their ability to swallow is really compromised, or late stage Alzheimer's, they can't swallow. So people will think, well, I can't starve mom to death. I have to put that feeding tube in. Well, no, you don't. You know, for example, we have a podcast about that. No, you don't have to put you don't have to put tubes in people unless they've said, if I can't feed myself, that's what I want. Because those tubes cause problems. People will still aspirate, they'll still get pneumonia. They're a burden on people and on their body. Because there's a way the body shuts down. And one of the things it says is, I don't need that stuff. Well, if you kind of go against nature and put those tubes in, you're making it hard on the body. Now, if that's something that somebody says, oh yeah, you put that IV in, you put that feeding tube in, I want that, that's one thing. But if somebody says, you know, they look at that form and they say, oh, this talks about artificial food and fluids, I don't want that. Well, then you can check that box and you can say, I don't want that. Or if it says, you know, would you want to be resuscitated? Would you, you know, it asks the questions. So you don't have to kind of come up in your head and say, oh my God, what are the questions I'm supposed to answer? What are my values on things that I don't even know what the questions are? Well, it'll ask you, and you go through and you answer them. And then you sign it. You pick two people who will make what we call substitute judgment. It's where if I can't speak for myself, then I say, okay, I want you to speak for me. And here's what my values are. I know I can't. And the whole thing about advanced directives is that they know that who knows what the technology in the future is going to offer to help treat me. I don't know that now. Nobody does. But if I can give you a set of guidelines that says, you know what, if I can't get up and go shopping at Target 3 times a week, don't do anything that's going to interfere with that. And if I can't do it, don't do anything that's going to prolong my life. Everybody's got their like line in the sand of, if I can't do this, don't do anything to extend my life. And then that person that you've chosen can look at the situation, can talk to the healthcare practitioners, and they can hear what's going on, what condition you're in, and they say, their job is then to say, well, if she was able to talk for herself, here's what she would say based on what she wrote in her advance directive, what she's told me, the conversations we've had. Now, the problem comes if you put down, I was working in hospice once and I had a patient who on her advance directive was this woman, nobody knew who she was, call her on the phone. Well, it was a former neighbor who had moved to Florida. And I said, well, here's the situation. She said, I don't know what she wants. I don't even know that she put my name down. How am I supposed to answer these questions? Well, your advance directive is really not very helpful at that point, is it? The point is to do it, document it, and then talk to the people and say, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I need from you. And so if you go through and fill that out, make copies for people. You don't need to have a notary. You have to have a witness, somebody other than those names you put down as your what we call a durable power of attorney, somebody who can answer those questions. And then you make copies, give them to a few kids, put them in an envelope and say, if anything happens to me, just open this. You don't even have to look at it, because if your kids don't want to talk about it, you're not thrilled with talking about it, but you know, this is just something that you need to do. And once you have it and you give it to a few people so that somebody will be able to find it when it's needed, then you don't have to keep dwelling on it unless you want to make changes to what you've said. But it's one of those kind of, you know, adulting things that we need to do. And it's not something that old people should do only. Everybody should do it, because we don't know what's coming down the road. If it's a truck coming for us and they're going to hit us and we're not going to be able to, you know, say what we want or what we don't want, we don't know. at any minute what's going to happen. So everybody should have an advance directive.
Now, thank you, Marianne, for sharing that thought with my audience. We don't really know what can happen anytime. Now, that's an absolute truth. That is inevitable. But really, how high prematurely, we found out that some of them have been battling with serious chronic diseases. So the question I want to ask right now is, how can we stay healthy in order for us to live a longer life? Is it possible?
Well, you know, we've done a few podcasts about that because, you know, why not start now? If people are so afraid to die, here's my thought. People are so afraid to die, then what are you doing so that you can have a longer, healthier life? And the two don't always go together. So there's things like smoking, major cause of a lot of healthcare issues. If you really want to live a long life, don't smoke. Weight is an important aspect. So having increased weight, being overweight, causes an inflammatory response within our bodies. And that can cause cancer, that can cause other health problems, and that can cause premature death. You can look at the foods that we eat, the microbiome, that biology of the inside of our bodies is really important. And it's a living thing. So it's got to be fed. It's got to have fruits. It's got to have vegetables. It's got to have healthy things in order for it to keep alive. Well, if you live on McDonald's and Cheetos, your microbiome is not a living thing. It's like struggling inside your body. And so you're going to have a shorter life if you're not eating a healthy, unprocessed as much as you can. You know, the ultra processed foods are not good for us. And we're seeing an increase in colon cancer in really young people. Colon cancer used to be a disease of old people. But if you look at the statistics, it's very concerning that people in their 20s are being diagnosed with colon cancer. My son-in-law's, one of his friends from grade school, what was he, 26? Just died from colon cancer. It's because in part, probably large part, of the diets that people are eating. If you're living on fast food, not eating fruits and vegetables, not getting yogurt and those kinds of things into your body, it's going to your body sort of rebels, and you can develop cancers, which are really mistakes within our cells because the system isn't healthy. Exercise is a really huge one. Exercise cures or prevents a lot of things like depression and cancer and diabetes and heart disease. But we really don't like, for most Americans, really don't like exercise as an option. Like, we drive through everywhere, we order our food to be delivered. I mean, we don't even go grocery shopping anymore. It's like, ooh, I can call Amazon or, wherever, and they will deliver my Cheetos to me. I don't even have to leave the house, And so think about technology has made things better for us, but it's also kind of helped push us along in terms of chronic diseases that are going to interfere with our ability to live a long and healthy life.
All right, thanks for that, Marianne. So moving forward, I'd like us to talk about debt cleaning. Let's say getting rid of junk so that the kids don't have to do it. Is this really necessary?
Yeah, I would say yes, it is, because we, in general, Americans like to collect things. And, if it's little frogs or chickens or fabric or beads or whatever it is that we happen to like. Oh, excuse the dogs. I don't know if you can hear them, but they're barking. We like having stuff, and that's cool. That's fine. But then, do we project forward to what's going to happen to my stuff, you know? And we think our kids are going to want it. I mean, I've treasured this forever. Of course they're going to want it. And the kids look at you and they say, I don't want that. I don't want that. And I went through that with when my mother died. You know, she collected teacups. Nobody wanted her teacups. Finally, I said to all the grandkids, y'all get in a teacup. Go in there, pick out a teacup and a saucer. That's your memory from grandma. And I don't know what happened to the rest of them. Or she collected precious moments, and she wrote on the bottom of them the date and who gave it to them. And my siblings and I, we had a joking thing about, well, you gave it to her, you have to take it back. It's like, I don't want that thing. I only bought it for her because she liked it. All that stuff ended up going donated to somewhere that maybe hopefully somebody could appreciate those things. And so as I've gotten older, we've downsized our house, and it was amazing how much stuff nobody wanted, that we didn't have room for in a smaller house, and that we donated. And it really made me say, when I want to buy something, in fact, I was just talking to myself about this just now, because I gotten some, I like to make pillowcases, you know, the old nice heavy cotton pillowcases, and embroider them. And so I have a stash, and I had just came across some recently, and I was putting them away in my box, and I just said to myself, you cannot buy any more pillowcases. You don't have enough life left in front of you to embroider all of these pillowcases. And hopefully I'll listen to myself and not leave those things behind for my kids to just go and donate, because they're not going to embroider them. You need to think about, you know, it's our fantasy that our kids are going to want to have that stuff, but the reality is they don't want it. So I'm here to like break your heart and tell you it's not something that they're going to want. And so go through it now. Donate it, sell it on eBay, make it easier for your kids, just like an advance directive. Makes it easier for your kids to do what they need to do when you're not here. So does getting rid of stuff or not buying anymore. So we do have a podcast about cleaning, and even about, because I was starting to go to estate sales and seeing how much stuff people had, just piles, walls of fabric. And it really kind of opened my eyes to, we can't do this to our kids. It's like, just stop, finish what you have. And then if you're still alive and you're still interested in embroidering pillowcases, then you can buy some more.
But really, the reality, Marianne, is that we are in this life, and we always have the urge to accumulate stuff. So does it mean that we should stop accumulating stuff, or have a controlled appetite for it?
Well, that's all a personal kind of preference. Some people, some of my peers say, screw it, I'll be dead, let the kids deal with it. And they don't even care. Some people will say, I don't want to make it harder. I want to be able to control what happens to my stuff. Like, I think, you know, like when I go to these estate sales and I walk through people's houses, I think, I don't want anybody walking through my house. I don't want anybody going through my underwear drawer. I don't want other people wearing my t-shirts unless I've given them away. So that's how I feel about it. But you have to ask yourself, you know, be realistic. If you're, I just finished I found these little Christmas stockings at an estate sale that were, the woman bought them, had the date on 1976. And here it was 2024, 23 when I bought them. She still hadn't done them. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's optimistic that you think, well, you know, you want to do it, but you didn't do it. And so I always kind of ask myself, if I want to buy something, are you going to use this? Are you going to do something with this? And if you're not, leave it for somebody else who will.
But Marianne, really what you're emphasizing is that it is possible for us to do this in our own way. But really I'm asking in my heart, why can't we do it in faith's way?
In fate?
Yes. Or why
Well,
can't we do it the way faith wants it?
well, I guess first off, you have to say, do you believe in fate? Like, what is your belief system about that? Not everybody believes in fate. Not everybody believes in a higher power. Not everybody believes in anything, you know? So that's why you kind of have to assess for yourself. What do you believe in? You know, is it fate that you have 800 squares of fabric that you think you're going to make a quilt out of that you never get to? Or is it fate that you're not going to burden your children with your collections? You know, it's a personal thing. That's why I say I look at the things and I say, here's the decision I made. And that's only as like a point of example for other people to say, oh, well, I guess I could look at my frog collection and decide if that's something that I need to continue to collect, or is it something that I want to start giving to people as, you know, I've collected these all of my life. This one's really special to me. I appreciate you. I want to give you one of my frogs. There's multiple ways to look at it. The question is, how does it work for you?
All right, thank you, Marianne Matzo, for sharing your thoughts on this important topic, talking about death. Now, really, at the end of the day, after death comes bereavement, which is also a reality that stares at our face. As an expert in this field, what advice will you prefer or share with those who are going through this situation?
Well, I think I would start by saying that what we've bought into with the whole there are stages of grief and you go through them one at a time. When Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was working doing that research, she was researching people who were dying. And the stages that she was talking about are the stages that people go through at the end of life. It kind of got co-opted to become the stages of grief. And I think as a society, we like things that we think we can control. And we don't like loss. Nobody likes loss. Nobody likes family members or people that they love to die. And it's painful. It's hard work. And so I think it kind of caught the American imagination in that they look at that and they say, oh, there's steps to do this really hard thing. All I have to do is follow the steps, get through all 5 of them, and then I won't be grieving anymore. Except it doesn't work that way. Grieving is a lifelong thing. It's the consequence of love. You love somebody, or a pet, or whatever it is, and at some point, if they're a living being, they're going to die, and you either grieve them or they grieve you, depending on who goes first, and that's the way of life. And so I think it's important to know there aren't 5 stages or 10 stages or 20 stages. It's a personal process. You go through as fast or as slow as your body needs to. And that if you think that loss is something that you're not going to feel ever again, it's not true. You will miss that person forever, or that animal forever. The question is how do you live your life while grieving? Do you continue to live your life? Do you continue to love? Do you continue to make new relationships? It's an honor to the person that you've lost to continue to love, to continue to open yourself to the possibility that you're going to have to go through that again because of the grief and the loss. But that's a great gift, to say that this was so important, that you were so important, that I feel that loss and that grief.
Thank you for that, Marianne. You published a book for the children and you titled it Everyone Dies, the book. What do you think that the children need this book?
Well, I think that as adults now, the adults we have now, are scared of death. They don't acknowledge or have integrated that it's a normal thing, that everybody does it, and that it will happen to everybody we know, and it will happen to ourselves. We deny that that's true. We know it's true, but we deny it. What I wanted to do was to sort of change that narrative. And it's hard to change that narrative with people who are already firmly believing that they are somehow going to beat death. So we wrote a children's book called Everyone Dies, to teach children that death is a part of life. Everybody does it. And it helps children to learn, there's concepts that children need to learn. They have to learn that death is irreversible. It's permanent. It can't be fixed or reversed. It is like birth, it happens, and death happens. And those two things happen to every living thing. And they're non-negotiable. They will happen. They have to learn that death is final. Dead is dead. You don't come back from the dead. Irregardless of religious beliefs or anything else, in terms of this body, when that body dies, it's dead. And learning it's inevitable. Kids don't have enough life experience that they know that death is inevitable for all living things. So we have to teach them that. They have to know that. But they also need to know that there's a cause for death. Children say, why did my dog die? Why did grandma die? And what do adults say back? They stumble, they stammer, they say it was their time. They went on a long trip, they went to sleep, all kinds of things that aren't true, and that just serve to confuse and scare the child. So with causality, what we say in the book is that there's only 3 reasons that living things die. It's really simple. There's only 3 reasons. And the 3 reasons are that they're very, very old, very, very sick, or very, very hurt. And children can understand 3 things, and they can understand that very, very means very, very, and that because mom got sick with a cold, she's not very, very sick. She's just sick. So that's why the very, very part is really important, because everybody gets hurt, everybody gets old, and everybody gets sick, but they don't all die from them. You don't die from your cold. You feel like you're going to die from your cold, but you don't. And so children can learn to understand that. And I did this with my children. I did it with my grandchildren. And actually, that's how the book came about, was that we were on the beach with our grandson who found a crab hand, shell, arm, whatever it's called. And we had this whole conversation, looked at how it articulated, talked about the crab. And he said, where's the rest of the crab? And I said, well, he's probably pretty hurt, losing his arm, he probably died, because that's one of the reasons that things die, is because, you know, you get very, very hurt and you can die. And he said, oh, all right. And we talked about that. And then his father, our son, who's a Marine, came back from his run, and Jack showed the crab to his dad, and his dad said, oh, and is the rest of the crab visiting his mother? And Jax looked at his dad and said, no, Dad, the crab's dead. He's very, very hurt. And his dad looked at us, and we kind of had that, yeah. We had the death talk with the 4-year-old. But from then on, Jax was like, that's a language that we all know. We can talk about, you know, when his dog died, he was very, very old, and that's why he died. It makes sense. And it takes the fear away from children if you talk about it, and you talk about it as it's normal. And so hopefully people will teach their children this way, and will read this book to them, and they can continue to have that conversation. And then we'll have maybe a new generation who will grow up to see that death's just a normal part of life. And it's sad when somebody dies, and I feel hurt when somebody dies, and it hurts my heart when somebody dies. But as we say at the ending of all of our podcasts, every day is a gift. And if we live every day as a gift, as it's like the best thing ever, then, you know, it makes it more palatable to think it'll someday end, because I've had all these gifts for all these days.
Thank you, Marianne. Do you have any exciting news or any projects you think the audience will benefit from? You can share that with the audience if you have any.
Well, we just started, I think it was this week, was the first part. We have a series that we're starting on cancer, and all the details about cancer and staging, and how to read your CT, and the different types of cancers, so that if you or a loved one are diagnosed with cancer, that you can listen in and you can get some good quality information. All of our podcasts are evidence-based, meaning that we look at the research and we give you facts. We don't deal in opinion, we deal in facts. And it's a great way to educate yourself. We also have series on the dying process, everything you've always wanted to know and didn't have anybody to ask about that, and about funerals and planning a funeral and all of that. So all these things we all go through, or we will go through, either to help a parent or a sibling or a friend, or we can pre-plan for ourselves and have a more educated approach to our lives, and really, really live each day well.
Absolutely. Can you share your social media handles, any, if you have any? I'm sure that you have. And besides, I would love you to share a parting word for the audience, if you have any.
A what? I'm sorry.
A parting word.
Oh, a parting word. Yes, I'll end my talk with you like I end our podcast. Every day is a gift. And remember that. And if you're having a hard day, tell yourself, this is my gift, and I'm going to make the best of it.
Absolutely. So we're looking forward to your social media handles and your website, so we can connect and learn more about Marianne Matzo, your project, your podcast, and what you have been up to lately. Go ahead.
Thank you. And you can go find all of our podcasts at www.everyonedies.org. It's EVERY, the number 1 dies.org.
Great, good to know. It's been lively by Omobola Stephen. I'm the host, Omobola Stephen. On today's show, we focus on death, how we can live well and die well. And I have Marianne Matzo, who is an experienced hospice nurse and the podcast host of Everyone Dies. She's also a retired professor and the Francis E&AL Ziegler Chair in Palliative Care Nursing. It's been great having you share profound insight on this important topic that most of us, virtually everyone, fears to talk about. Thank you for such expository discussion you brought to the audience of Library by Omobola Stephen. We sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the audience, I wish you best of luck in all the projects that you embark upon, Marianne.
Thank you, and the same to you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. If you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of Library by Omobola Stephen, you can catch it up on any podcast distribution platforms or any podcast promotion platforms you bump into online. Just search for Library by Omobola Stephen, and there you go. Do have a great time listening to the podcast and be transformed in and out as expert and professionals share mind-shift conversations on topics or subjects that are related to personal development and self-improvement. I need you always to stay safe. I talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you once again, Marianne. That was a great show we had.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.